Chosen One, something is already burning, and the smoke is finally rising from the wreckage of their plans. It is now clear that they tortured you and angered God. They lit a fire they can't control. They looked at your patience and called it weakness, reaching into your sacred life with the arrogant belief that they could set you ablaze and walk away clean. There was a moment, you remember it, maybe it came as a betrayal that arrived without warning. Maybe it was the slow erosion of trust across a long season. Maybe it was the day you realized that the people you believed were standing with you were never standing with you at all, that the smiles were rehearsed, that the support was conditional, that the moment you stopped being useful or started becoming too much of what they secretly wanted to be, everything shifted. That moment was not random, it was scheduled, not by them because they did not have that kind of power. It was scheduled from a place they cannot access and cannot understand. The truth that nobody teaches you about chosen ones until you are already through the fire is this: the assignment on your life requires a specific kind of preparation. That preparation does not come from comfort. It does not come from ease. It comes from pressure. It comes from being placed inside environments that would collapse someone who was not built for what you were built for. You were not randomly placed in the path of those people. You were sent there, not to be destroyed by them, but to be revealed through them. Every person who came against you was exposing a layer of capacity you did not know you had. Every attempt to silence you was actually amplifying a voice they could not hear yet, but that heaven was already preparing a stage for. Here is what they never caught. The very qualities they tried to weaponize against you, your openness, your willingness to keep extending grace to people who were showing you their worst, those were never flaws. Those were the features of someone built to carry something heavy. You were functioning exactly as a chosen one functions. You were absorbing pressure that would have broken most people, and in doing so, you were being proven, layer by layer, for a level of assignment that requires exactly this kind of endurance as its evidence. Let's not soften what happened. Let's name it correctly, because until you name it, you cannot fully release it. And until you release it, you cannot fully step into what is waiting on the other side. Some of them enjoyed your pain. There is a specific kind of darkness that lives in a person who can smile while someone else is falling apart. It is not born of ignorance, it is cultivated. It is the kind of darkness that feeds off control and draws quiet satisfaction from watching someone it perceives as a threat slowly diminish. Every time you went silent, it gave them a sense of power. Every time you questioned yourself because of something they planted in your mind, they felt confirmation that they were winning. Your confusion was their comfort. Your exhaustion was their evidence that they were in control. While they were collecting those moments like trophies, God was collecting them too, not as trophies, but as evidence. God was watching every manipulation executed behind a mask of innocence, every lie planted in the minds of people who trusted them, every act of cruelty directed from the shadows while they pretended to be bystanders. God was not just watching passively. God was recording and building a case so thorough and so complete that when the moment of reckoning arrived, there would be no crack to slip through and no story left to spin. The most dangerous thing they ever did was not the first attack. It was the decision to keep going after they saw you were still standing, because a chosen one who has survived the first wave is not the same person they attacked in the beginning. Every wave they sent made you harder to move. Every attempt to break you built something inside you that was not there before. They were so focused on the performance of your pain that they completely missed the transformation that pain was producing inside you. They kept escalating against someone who was getting stronger with every hit. They lit fire after fire, not knowing that each one was adding to a flame inside you that they could neither access nor extinguish. Your tears were not their victory. Your tears were the fuel for your ascension. From the outside, your silence looked like losing. It looked like you had nothing left to say. It looked like they had won so completely that you could not form a defense. They passed that story around, and people believed it because it looked true from where they were standing. But silence in the hands of a chosen one is not the same thing as silence in the hands of anyone else. Your silence was not defeat. It was a decision, even if you only felt it in your gut and had not yet understood it in your mind, that the moment you stepped into that ring on their terms, you would hand them exactly what they needed to rewrite the entire story. Every time you chose not to retaliate, you were clearing the space so heaven could see clearly. Every time you walked away instead of exploding, you were letting the truth stand without interference. There is a courtroom in the spirit that does not weigh personality, does not factor in popularity, and does not bend toward whoever tells the most convincing story. It weighs hearts, and your heart, under all that pressure, stayed clean. That integrity under fire is the most powerful testimony that can ever be entered into a divine record. Your silence did something else entirely. It preserved your authority. Every chosen one carries a level of spiritual authority that is directly connected to how they handle injustice. When you respond to cruelty with cruelty, you hand over a portion of that authority. But when you absorb the attack without throwing it back, when you let God handle what your hands were never supposed to touch, you walk away from that season with your spiritual power completely intact. You did not just survive those attacks, you survived them without losing what matters most. And what matters most is exactly what God is about to use. If this message activated your knowing, hype this video to connect with more chosen ones on this journey. They did not come after you because of what you did. They came after you because of what you are. Your growth held up a mirror to their stagnation. Your authenticity exposed their performance. Your favor was a direct confrontation of every compromise they had made and decided to keep making. You were not doing anything to them. You were simply being yourself. But being yourself at the level you operate at is a provocation to people who have spent a long time running from who they were supposed to become. They could not match what you carry. And instead of rising to meet it, they decided to drag it down. Instead of looking inward at why your presence unsettled them, they made you the problem. And that is the moment the declaration of war was signed, not by you, but by them. Because they were not just attacking a person. Every time they came at you, they were challenging the God who made you. They were throwing their weight against the calling attached to your life and declaring that the assignment heaven placed on you was something they had the authority to extinguish. They did not have that authority. Nobody does. They were not just feuding with you personally. They were attempting to interrupt a divine assignment, and they brought a human strategy into a spiritual battle they were completely unequipped for. There is no version of that equation where the human strategy wins. What happened invisibly in every one of those moments is this. Every attack they launched got absorbed, not just by you, but by the assignment covering you. And the assignment does not bleed, it does not negotiate. It responds by rerouting around every obstacle placed in its path and landing you exactly where you were always meant to be. Sometimes by an entirely different path than you expected. Every detour they forced became a redirect to something better than your original destination. Every person they disconnected you from created space for a higher alignment that was waiting for you to have room. Every position you lost because of their interference became the exact reason you were available for something you could not have stepped into while you were still in that place. You were not being set back, you were being set up. You prayed, you kept praying, you asked God to step in while they moved freely, and their reputation stayed intact. You were not just hurting, you were genuinely confused. You knew God saw everything, so you kept asking why nothing was happening. What felt like divine silence was actually divine strategy. God was not going to simply shut it down. God was going to prove who was who, beyond any possible argument. If heaven had moved too early, they would have played innocent. They would have cried victim louder than you ever did, and made the intervention look like your aggression. God knew that, so the case was allowed to build. They were allowed to go further and further still, until the accumulation of unrepented cruelty was so thorough that when the correction arrived, there was nothing left to argue. Every night you lay awake without answers, went into the record. Every time you forgave and they took it as license to wound you again, that went into the record too. Every lie told about you while you were telling the truth, every setup, every planted seed of doubt, all of it was preserved with precision. Look, you already know the attacks weren't random, and if you're paying attention you can feel it. Their walls are closing in. You've also noticed something else. A lot of Chosen One channels on YouTube have gone quiet, videos removed, voices pushed off the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. So let's talk about what we're doing about it. That's why I built Destiny Engine, and when you join, you're not just supporting your favorite channels, you're also fueling your own rise. It's a 360 win. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is, you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning, so everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny Engine for $1 today and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. The delay was not against you. The delay was being built into the architecture of what comes next for them. God was not giving them more time to hurt you. God was giving them enough rope to make the fall undeniable, so that when the verdict dropped, not one person watching could call it unfair. The verdict is now sealed, and what comes next does not come with a warning. The verdict being sealed means your job of defending yourself is finished. You do not have to carry that weight anymore. The case is no longer in your hands. Your only assignment now is to move forward, to stop turning around to check whether the people who hurt you are acknowledging what God is doing, and to stop measuring your elevation by whether they are watching. The most powerful thing you can do in the aftermath of everything they put you through is to simply become undeniable. Not loudly, not with performance, but fully and completely yourself, living the life that their attacks were specifically designed to prevent. That is the verdict being executed in real time. Your ascension and their unraveling are both happening simultaneously, and the contrast between the two is the most eloquent statement ever made about the God who chose you. This is the revelation that retroactively changes the meaning of everything they did to you. You were not the target, you were the test, and they failed it catastrophically. Your presence in their life was divinely scheduled, not as a resource for them to use, not as a stepping stone, but as a character evaluation. Your presence was a direct, real-time measurement of the heart. How they handled your kindness revealed how they handled grace. How they handled your silence revealed how they handled power. How they handled your loyalty revealed how they handled covenant. And God watched every single response. You were the Joseph thrown into the pit by the very people who should have protected you. And just like that account, the pit was not the ending, it was the transfer. The moment you went into that pit was the moment the trajectory of your elevation was locked in. God does not just respond to injustice against chosen ones, God uses it. The very mechanism they tried to destroy you with gets converted into the engine that drives your promotion. Every closed door they slammed sent you toward a better one. Every lie they planted fertilized the ground your truth grew from. Every connection they severed created space for a greater alignment that could not have arrived while you were still surrounded by people who were occupying the room without serving the purpose. And this is where some chosen ones get tripped up. You understand intellectually that God is moving on your behalf, but you are still waiting for permission to fully step into what is being built. You are waiting for the people who hurt you to acknowledge the damage. You are waiting for a public vindication before you allow yourself to fully inhabit the destiny that is already open and waiting for you. Stop waiting. The door is already open. The assignment is already active. Your hesitation at the threshold is not humility. It is a habit built by long seasons of being told you needed permission from people who never had the authority to grant it in the first place. They did not authorize your calling, and they cannot revoke it. What God opens, the people who tried to lock you out of your own life cannot shut. Walk through the door, the foundation will hold. Up until now, the focus has been on what was done to you, the accumulation, the evidence, the divine strategy embedded inside the delay. But now comes what God does when the file is complete and the verdict is sealed. It does not show up loudly. It does not arrive with fanfare or a dramatic public moment. It shows up in the places they thought were most secure. A relationship fractures in a way that makes no sense to them. An opportunity that seemed certain disappears without explanation. The peace they slept in while you were suffering becomes increasingly difficult for them to locate. The influence they built starts corroding from the inside in ways they cannot publicly acknowledge. And the isolation they worked so hard to create around you begins visiting them now in their own life, in their own quiet moments, in the rooms they used to fill with confidence. They will call it bad luck. They will blame circumstances. They will perform stability publicly. But in the private moments that no one else sees, they will know. The human conscience, no matter how deeply buried, does not fully forget what it has done. The fire they lit to destroy you has reversed direction, not because of a curse you placed, not because of revenge you sought, but because God has laws. And one of those laws is this: you do not violate sacred things and walk away intact. The fire generated by every act of cruelty, every decision to keep going when grace was saying stop, every calculated wound delivered behind a smile, that fire never belonged to you, it belonged to them. They pointed it in your direction, but it could not take root in you. So it returned to its source. The people who were confidently aligned with them during your hardest seasons are beginning to quietly distance themselves, not because anyone told them to, but because they are starting to feel something they cannot name, an unease, a sense that the version of events they accepted is no longer adding up the way it once did. The favor now visible on your life is making the narrative they believed about you increasingly difficult to maintain. God is not only addressing the direct attacks made against you, every lie used to discredit you, every door pushed closed behind your back, every hidden act of sabotage without fingerprints, all of it is being addressed. The correction is happening at every level the attack touched. Some of those restorations you will not even recognize until you are fully standing inside them. You are on the other side of the fire, untouched. And the contrast between where you are standing and where they are right now is not coincidence. It is divine order being restored. Go back for a moment, back to the nights nobody witnessed, back to the nights you lay there with a chest full of grief and nowhere to put it, back to the nights you prayed and heard silence and kept praying anyway. Every tear you cried in that darkness was a liquid prayer. It was not weakness leaking out, it was a direct transmission into the spirit realm that bypassed every human system and landed exactly where it needed to land. Soul-level weeping does not get filtered or redirected by the opinions of people who dismissed you. It goes straight to the throne of God, and it does not go unanswered. While they were sleeping comfortably in the life they built during your suffering, you were unknowingly building something they cannot access. Every night of weeping laid a foundation in the spirit. Every prayer spoken through tears was a deposit into an account they cannot see and cannot withdraw from. You were not falling apart in those moments. You were funding your future in a currency they do not know how to earn. The tears you cried in private, in rooms where no human witness existed, created something that no public performance ever could. They created an intimacy with God that is only forged in that specific kind of suffering. There is a level of divine access that only opens through the kind of pain that strips everything away and leaves you with nothing left to rely on except God alone. Most people never reach that level because they never have to. You reached it, Not because you are weaker than everyone else, but because your assignment requires a depth of access that most callings never demand. The people who tortured you thought they were breaking your connection to God. They were actually deepening it. The isolation they engineered around you, they thought they were removing your support system, but they were positioning you to lean so completely on the divine that you came out of that season with a level of intimacy that cannot be manufactured, cannot be performed, and cannot be taken away. What was stolen from you in the natural, God replaced with something in the spirit that is worth incomparably more, and you are only beginning to understand the full value of what was deposited inside you during the seasons they were certain would destroy you. The favor now showing up in unexpected places is not luck. The doors opening from directions no one predicted are not coincidence. Those are the returns on a long season of faithful, unseen weeping. Heaven is paying back what it has owed since the first night you cried and chose to keep believing anyway. This part is not about extending sympathy to them, it is about giving you peace, because understanding what happened removes the last remaining confusion about why things unfolded the way they did. They were not blindsided by what is happening to them now. They knew. In the private places of their own conscience, they were given chances to stop before the consequences became irreversible. They experienced nights of disturbed sleep with no logical explanation. They felt a sudden unease in the middle of their most confident moments. They watched a door close quietly as an early warning. They felt conviction turn their stomach and they suppressed it quickly and kept moving. God was not silent with them. God was persistent with them. Every possible off-ramp was made available before the road ended. They chose the road, every time, not out of confusion, but out of pride, out of the specific kind of rebellion that looks at consequences approaching and decides, not yet, not for me, I will not be the one who has to stop. Rebellion is different from weakness. Weakness falls into something wrong, feels the guilt, and turns around. Rebellion looks at the wrong thing with full awareness and chooses it anyway. They saw grace extended toward them through your patience and read it as permission to go further. They saw God holding back and called it approval. They accumulated spiritual debt at every opportunity and convinced themselves there would never be a reckoning. The reckoning is here. It is not impulsive and it is not emotional. It is precise. Divine justice is calibrated to every level of the damage caused, not just the attacks you witnessed, but every behind-the-scenes conversation, every door pushed closed without fingerprints, every hidden layer of interference you never even knew about. All of it is being addressed with the same precision it was inflicted. You never had to curse anyone. The choices they made, repeated, deliberate and fully aware, were consequential enough on their own. The fallout they are now navigating is not your revenge. It is the compound weight of a debt that was built deliberately and is now being collected completely. You are not built the way most people are. That is not arrogance speaking. That is a fact about your design. Your presence carries covenant. When you walk into someone's life, heaven marks the interaction. There are terms written into how you are to be handled, and when those terms are violated past a certain threshold, something activates in the spiritual architecture of your assignment that no human hand can stop or reverse. On the surface you look like anyone else, you feel pain the same way, you bleed the same way, but underneath, at the level of calling and divine purpose, there are mechanisms in your life that respond to prolonged injustice in ways that entirely bypass human understanding. They were not just hurting a person, they were violating the terms of a covenant they did not even know existed. And every violation past the threshold of what grace could absorb was triggering a shift they could not see. They were sitting on that threshold, confident in their control, treating your endurance as leverage and your forgiveness as a permission slip. What they could not see was the spiritual architecture beneath every act of patience they were exploiting. And when that threshold was finally crossed past the point where even grace could hold the space, everything began to move, not loudly, not dramatically, but in a slow, exact, divine unraveling of everything built on the wrong foundation. And this is where your story moves from endurance into elevation. But elevation for a chosen one looks different than most people expect. It does not always arrive as a dramatic public moment where everyone who doubted you simultaneously acknowledges the truth. Sometimes it looks like moving through the world without their voices playing in the background of your decisions anymore. That specific freedom, that lightness in your chest, is elevation. It may actually be the most significant elevation of all, because the greatest damage they did was not external. The greatest damage was internal. It was the way their words gradually embedded themselves into how you saw yourself. It was the way their version of you started competing with the real version for space in your own mind. It was the way you started moving smaller in certain rooms, not because you had to, but because the habit of shrinking had been trained into you so thoroughly that it began to feel like your natural size. Your natural size is not small. Your natural size is the full, undiminished, God-given weight of everything you carry, and you are reclaiming it now, not by fighting for it, but by returning to it, by operating from the truth about yourself that existed before their version of you was ever invented. The same voices that told people you were unstable and not worth believing are stuttering now in rooms where they used to be the loudest. The peace they carried while you were suffering is becoming increasingly difficult for them to locate, and the isolation they worked hard to create around you is visiting them now in their own life, in their own quiet moments, in the spaces they used to move through with confidence. Some of them will come back. Understand this clearly, because it is coming. Some of them will return, not because they have genuinely changed, but because they can feel the favor on your life from a distance, and they want access to what they sense in you, the same anointing they mocked, the same connection to heaven they repeatedly violated. They will reach toward you through a performance of transformation and ask for your prayers, your intercession, your voice going to God on their behalf. You are not obligated to provide it. Not from bitterness, not from revenge. Your assignment with them is complete. The door that was open during the season of their abuse is closed now, not by your hand, but by the same hand that was covering you the entire time. They did not lose access because you withheld it. They lost access because judgment arrived and access was revoked. The fact that you still feel any compassion toward people who treated you the way they did is not a weakness in your character. It is evidence of the very thing they were most threatened by. You are built with a capacity for love that survived the most sustained attempts to corrupt it. That capacity never turned into cruelty. It never transformed into a desire to see them destroyed beyond what justice requires. That means they failed at the deepest level of what they were attempting. They did not just want to hurt you. They wanted to change you into something smaller and darker. They wanted to turn you into someone who operates from the same broken place they operate from. And you refused, not passively, but powerfully. You remained oriented toward your purpose rather than their destruction. That refusal is the most complete victory in this entire sequence of events. They lost on every level that actually counts. Walk forward knowing that, not with arrogance, with authority. Chosen ones do not get consumed by fire. They get forged by it. The fire that was meant to reduce you to nothing was doing the most important work of your entire existence. It was burning off everything that was not you. The doubt they planted, the false identities they assigned you, the limitations they insisted were permanent, the false narratives they built around your name. The fire burned through all of it. What is left is irreducible. It is the core of who you actually are, stripped of every performance of smallness you maintained to survive environments that were always too small for what you carry. And what is left is not damaged. It is concentrated. It is the most powerful version of you that has ever existed, because it has been proven under the exact conditions designed to destroy it. They thought they were burying you, but you cannot bury something that is designed to grow. You can only plant it. And what they planted in that dark underground season is now breaking through the surface, not fragile, not tentative, but explosive, because roots that develop in the dark go deeper and grip harder than roots grown in easy soil ever do. The fire they aimed directly at you, the one they fed with everything they had, God took it and turned it into your spotlight. The same flame that was meant to expose your failures is now exposing your calling to audiences they never intended you to reach. The same heat that was designed to break you down forged you into something they cannot replicate and cannot take away. Every curse they spoke over your life unknowingly poured power into your next level. Every lie they told about you created the very contrast that makes your truth undeniable now. They did not bury a failure. They planted a legend. And now here is the answer to the question that has lived underneath everything you have been carrying, the one you may not have named out loud, but that has been present through every hard season. The question of whether any of it mattered, whether the silence was worth it, whether staying faithful when everything in you had every right to be bitter actually produced something real. Every single moment mattered. The suffering was the process, the silence was the strategy, the faithfulness was the testimony, and the calling you stayed faithful to, the one they tried to make you doubt, abandon and forget, is more alive right now than it has ever been. It is more intact, more powerful, and more ready to move than it was before any of this began. They tortured you. In doing so, they angered God. They lit a fire they cannot control. But the fire most significant right now is not the one consuming everything they built with unclean hands. It is the one burning inside you, the one that was never extinguished despite everything poured on it, the one burning cleaner, hotter, and with more direction than ever before. That is the fire of a chosen one who has been fully proven, fully forged, and fully ready. The fire is not consuming you, chosen one. It is completing you, and it is only just beginning.